secular and have got the gun. Let's ask the pertinent questions and watch as we get answers. Here in South Africa, there is still a healthy population of lands contributing to tourism and creating thousands of jobs. Sadly, in Nigeria, we have less than 50 lions left in the wild. Imagine if we could help their numbers recover and we become a wildlife tourist destination. So let's protect our lands because poaching steals from us all.
Born 16th September 1923, named Harry Lee Kuan and known as Lee Kuan Yew, he was often addressed by his initials of LKY. Lee Kuan Yew was a barrister and the first Prime Minister of Singapore between 1959 and 1990. Educated at Raffles Institution from 1936 to 1940 and the Fitzwilliam House between 1947 and 1949, Lee Kuan Yew established a highly effective and anti-corrupt governance system that midwifed the transformation of Singapore into a high net worth income economy within a generation. He never hid his exception to Western mode democratic ideal, which he believed had not assisted developing nations to attain good government. Before his death on 23rd March 2015, the People's Action Party, which he founded, had used its political influence to establish the United World College of Southeast Asia to expand his economic ideas among countries that constitute the Asian Tiger. Western Spring Television identifies Lee Kuan Yew as a major character in history.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life.
Western Spring Television, ours it is.
Arise and shine, smell the coffee, is the dawn of a new day. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, world. You're welcome to Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. This is where we look at critical and trending issues, topical issues in the nation, and sometimes beyond the shores of the nation, every weekday, 7 a.m. at this time here at Western Spring Television. You can find us on channel 190 DTT on the Star Times, and of course we are live on our YouTube channel right now at Western Spring Television. Good to know that you are there, and thank you for always sticking with us, where we have this conversation that has to do with the public good, and that's what we do here. Ours is to have these conversations. Yours is to be part of it and make do of what we discuss here. Trust us to be balanced on every angle of the conversation. Femi Ojo is my name. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you at this time. Today, the 7th of November, Tuesday, 7th of November, 2023. You can be assured that the program today will be as interesting as ever. Of course, you're welcome. And of course, my colleague is here.
Yes, this is Evelyn Ohiolei. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's a perfect day. As they say, the number 7 represents perfection, and we hope that today is going to be a perfect day for you and that you will draw closer to your dreams. Welcome on board to Morning Spring, the Tuesday installment of the show.
All right, and of course, good to know that talking about people, everyone having another chance at life to draw close to their dreams and their goals, because every day gives its own opportunity as well. On the program, we look at the headline segment, and that is where we look into the major stories and our major dailies every day. We're going to do that, and at the other side of that, we then get talking or speaking about what is happening in the nation. Evelyn, the big one still remains the coming election.
Yeah, we'll draw closer to
at the weekend. But then, before the election, there's been an ugly spate. I'm talking about the rise in insecurity. Again, the activities of these criminals called bandits and kidnappers, it's looking like it's not abating. It's looked at some point like we made some progress. But now you're seeing abductions in people's homes, in schools, on their highways, and killings. I think there was an incident in the Yobe state now where bandits had to go and kill some people, and the speed at which they do this sometimes is not that fast, because you hear that some of these criminals are there 1 hour, 2 hours, and you wonder where are the security operatives. They will kill, and then they may abduct women, for God knows what they use them for. But then it's a source of concern. It should be a cause of concern and worry for any women in Nigeria.
Yes, it should be a source of concern. I remember when Ladeji was here, I think that was last week, and he said we have come to a point in our country where the death of anyone really doesn't mean anything to us. We are already used to it. Sadly, we're already used to it. There was a time where you hear someone died in a particular location, you shiver. Yeah. But nowadays you hear 20 people killed, 40 people killed, 80 people died.
You see people feel 20, oh, sorry.
And that's all, we move on.
4 died. When it's 100, you feel like, oh, that's a bit much.
We move on. So
sadly about the figures.
It's something we should actually work on as a nation, so we don't get used to it. It doesn't become a norm. We don't have war in the country. Yes, we have the internal crisis and all of that.
No nation is perfectly okay when it comes to security or insecurity. It's a war like what's happening in Ukraine or what's happening in Gaza.
This is an internal situation that can be dealt with. And when Mr. President came in, insecurity was one thing he said he was going to deal with.
Of course, he was having a series of meetings with the former security chiefs. Later, he let them go, appointed new ones, and we thought, okay, we're going to see a new lease of life. Alas, yes, the guys are trying. The men in uniform, we give it to you. You're really trying and doing your best, by the way. But then it appears the fact is there for all of us to see that the best is not good enough.
Yes.
These guys are still wreaking havoc.
Yes. What I feel personally is that the presidency's focus, or the president's focus, has shifted from security to economy. You know, when he came in on board, he was really squarely focused on security. He wanted to, you know, do something.
It looked like that.
Well, we can't say, but we saw
security,
the movement, we saw his body language. He really wanted to deal with it.
Series of meetings.
And we had the IGP, Kayode Egbetok, when he came in, he said if he feels like a lion. I don't know the exact words he used.
Like ready to roar.
Roar like a lion and all of that. And I remember Nigerians coming at him for that particular statement. We need you to work, don't just talk. A lot of your predecessors have talked and they didn't really do nothing. So we needed to work. And the speed at which this insecurity is going is proof, actually, that these heads of security agencies need to do more. They really need to do more.
You know, talking about the focus of Mr. President, possibly when he came in, having security meetings, for the former ones, having new ones across board, the new IGP, other military chiefs, having a new NSA, and the rest of it. But that, it seems we are not here, not there now. Security is not good at all. And then, you know, you saying possibly it's focused on the economy. Where are we with the economy? So we should, it's a lot to be a Nigerian right now. That's what somebody said. You wake up and then you feel like what's going on, but then, just like we said, it's another time and it's another chance to do what you know how to do best. We go straight to the papers right now, and let's start from the Nigerian Tribune. For this morning, the Nigerian Tribune, very detailed information, quite much, and then we go to it one after the other. Nigerian Tribune, Guba poll, 40,000 police personnel for Kogi, 40,000 police personnel for Kogi. Let's inform you that you can join us on all our social media platforms as well, on X, on Instagram, and on Facebook at Western Spring Television. Guba poll, 40,000 police personnel for Kogi. IGP reads riot act to perpetrators of violence. Visit Bayelsa. We are 90% prepared. INEC. About the other 10, we hope the other 10 will not be the albatross. We're talking about logistics. Redeploy, IMOREC, PDP urges, and then many persons are saying that, especially the PDP, to say, follow the suit of the IGP, who has removed all the commissioners in all these 3 states, you know, not to leave any space for second guessing of the work of the gallant men. Okay, appeal court reserves judgment in Kano Guba election. Ports and harbors will promote casualization, maritime workers. Release or produce Emefiele, November 8, court orders EFCC. And when I heard this yesterday, it was supposed to be produced in court yesterday, but it wasn't. And, you know, the judge had to warn them and say they should be the last time. I was a bit upset.
This speaks to how much we just take
slam something heavy on these people. Why warning? The court said this is the day that this man should appear in court. You failed to do that. We don't know why. And they were not represented in court as far as we're concerned, as that's what is concerned. Then the judge had to say you have to provide him, and he's giving you warning. Why? Slam something heavy so that every agency's human beings, personnel, MDAs will know that you don't mess with institutions. We are talking about building institutions. And this is make examples of these people. Moving on, 2 killed as fire got Canadian embassy in Abuja. It was a Saturday yesterday, seeing that video with smoke coming, and then the president has spoken and said Nigerians are with you and we will give you the necessary support. And sadly, 2 people died.
Yeah, but the details are still shoddy.
A bit sketchy,
the details of the people that died or how the fire started is still shoddy at this time.
Because we learned that place was condoned off, you know, at the best. Obi carpet Supreme Court. INEC over 2023 election presidency. APC key expectedly, by the way. And now you see at the picture there, show of force in Kogi and Bayelsa. It's military trucks with their men there. Nigerian Army conducts a show of force in Kogi and Bayelsa State in readiness for Saturday, November 11 governorship election. All right. And is to show them that we are ready, you know. And this thing could mean 2 things to different persons. Show of force means for all the criminally minded people, you better don't come out at all because we are ready for you. And it may scare some other persons away too, to say, why are we having this?
Over militarization of the environment.
The election, yeah. And then
people get scared when they see guns.
Of course. And then whenever you see that military camouflage, you feel what's going on here. Is there a premeditation of a danger? That's why these people are coming. I'd rather stay in my house.
And the fear of stray bullet, I should say. Accidental discharge. They call it that.
God forbid that. Court finds NYSC 5 million naira, confirms and bars NYSC certificate authentic, and all your workers to get 25,000 naira wage award for 6 months. And I think 15,000 naira wage award for pensioners as well. I think this is a good one for people in your state. And the governor as well. U.S. travel advisories causing needless panic. Nigeria is safe. Federal government is saying that, and you wonder why the U.S. advising, although they are not advising Nigerians, they're advising their own citizens
in Nigeria
not to go to certain places, certain big hotels, to be careful. And then back to that, court finds NYSC 5 million naira, confirms and bars NYSC certificate authentic. This is a story that is awkwardly interesting. That the court are saying the certificate this man is having, that's Peter Obi, is authentic. NYC went to the court to say it's not authentic, but the court has spoken. That will be all from the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
All right, we get on to the Punch newspaper this morning. And the big story here on the Punch newspaper: off-season polls, military please vow tough actions for ballot box snatchers. Others, security chiefs warn hoodlums. 67,000 policemen for Kogi Bayelsa governorship elections. IG orders tight security at collation centers. FG vows transparency. Saraki demands fairness. We are inching closer to the D-Day for Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi elections. And like we talked the other time, I spoke on the other time about the over-militarization of these states. But then we just hope that on that day, things go accordingly. Yeah. We know that it's somewhat something impossible to say, especially when it comes to Nigeria politics and elections, but we can only hope and pray. And just like the CDS Musa said the other time, warning thugs and ballot box snatchers, saying
you will walk into your grave.
Yeah, snatch ballot box and
go to your cemetery.
Prepare for the cemetery. Away from that, still on the Punch newspaper, courts reject Akeredolu lawmaker suits against Ayedatiwa. That's on page 9 there. The embattled deputy governor kind of has a briefing space now with this court rejection. Lagos slashes BRT fares by 25% after passengers outcry. That's on page 6. Responsive government, I should say. Wow. They had moved back to the August 2nd T-fare, transportation fare, back to how it was before, after the 50% reduction.
Yeah, that's ended, yeah.
But then the residents cried out and said, not when the economy is dwindling. Where do you want us to get, this money from for transportation? And the government kind of heard them, and now we have 20% reduction. 25, I beg your pardon.
It was formerly 50.
50, now
as 25%. We say around here, at all.
Naiba pass.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. 2 die in Canadian embassy fire. Tinubu mourns. Let's go to the topmost part on the Punch newspaper, the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning. U.S. security advisory needless, discourages investors. FG. Femi, one will wonder, the U.S. security advisory, why wasn't there a diplomatic talk between the federal government and the U.S.
host country, Nigeria?
Knowing that we even have good relations with this country, but then they have to protect their citizens too. That's what's important.
It's not. I think I want to, in a kind of way, see reasons for the federal government for frowning at these and saying, why are they generalizing? That's the explanation of the Minister of Information, saying these are just pockets of issues in some places. You could have just limited it to some places and don't generalize and make the country look like it's a war zone. Yeah.
Because you have people that wanted to travel into Nigeria.
Yeah, that will scare them away and say, okay, if the US are saying this, it is not to travel. Let's keep ourselves safe, firstly, and then we can see how others we refer to us. All
right, too much stories on the punch. 4.3 trillion naira lost to all theft in 5 years. This coming from the government. Get more details on page 19 of the Punch newspaper this morning. And INEC delays trial of 197 electoral offenders. That's on page 8, even though people have said 197 is a low figure compared to the violence that we had in the last general election. Yesterday, while we're talking to Mr. Idowu on the show, we spoke about judicial pronouncements for violators of elections and also electoral offenders. I think this is what we need. Why delay since March? Now we are in November. We hope the right thing is done. That's all for the Punch newspaper.
We move to the blueprint. The blueprint for this morning. Federal government tackles U.S. over travel advisory, assures on security investment. Thank you for assuring, but it's not just about that. Nigerians must see that things have improved, and it's improving, actually, making consistent progress on these matters. Riders urges media to amplify efforts to secure Nigeria and plans massive value reorientation campaigns. Right. And you see the picture there where that statement came from. It was a press briefing. The Minister for Information is there himself. The Special Assistant to the President on Media is there as well, and flanked by other officers. Moving on. 80% of rural women can't access financial services. PLC pleased to deploy 40,000 personnel for Kogi governorship. When I saw this, I was like, this is interesting, because I remember at the town hall meeting organized by KDI and Media House, having critical stakeholders, the IGP was asked this question: what's the size of the deployment? And he said, for strategy or security reasons, he won't say at that forum. And now we are hearing that police is deploying 40,000. You're wondering what's going on. What's exclusive about that? By the way, it has always been, pronounced. These also numbers of persons will be going there. But, soldiers rescue woman about to commit suicide in Lagos Lagoon. Will you want to say that's a lucky day for her? Because I'm sure she wasn't willing to be alive, according to the story, but then she has been rescued.
But, the spate of people wanting to just leave the earth and go wherever it is they want to go is alarming. They want to die. That's just put it. There's jackpot. There's two meanings of jackpot. Yeah. We have the jackpot outside of the country, and we have the jackpot out of earth. But this is a sad one. That jackpot out of death is death out of earth, by the way. It's a sad one because when people are pushed to the point where they don't have hope, and they just want to go. Recently we heard a story of a man that killed himself in Oshogbo. In Oshogbo, and hung himself. He read the Bible and all of that, and his room was messed up. This speaks to how much people are bottling in. Yeah, you see a lot of people go out well dressed and all of that, but a lot of people are really going through. And it speaks to mental health. Yes, having to deal with life challenges, and some doesn't see the light, at the end of the tunnel, or even at anywhere. So, but then let's say it, as sad as it is, suicide is never an option. Yes, it doesn't make anything better at all. If anybody kills himself or kills herself, the family members, some persons will never have the answer, and they have to be second guessing, why did this happen? And your family suffer. And I should put this out there, as Nigerians, we should be our brother's keeper. That's it. You should speak nice words to people, even strangers, because you never know what they are going through. Yeah. One word from your mouth can actually push someone into doing something crazy. Make somebody feel better.
about themselves. You can never tell. Moving on, 2023 polls, court cases not won on public opinion. APC slams Obi, right? We are ready to play opposition role. Ex-Anambra governor, we get to talk about these very shortly, saying the Labour is ready for opposition politics. All right. And price of 12.5 kg cooking gas to hit 18,000 naira December. Marketers Evelyn was shocked yesterday when I had to get some.
Mine is still very much
get some stuff, and then you got there. I think sugar is 1,100, or where I went to rather.
Per kg.
Per kg, and then you're wondering, it's not even December yet.
Yes.
That's where we have found ourselves. And the marketers are saying 12.5 kg cooking gas to hit 18,000 naira by December. Minimum wage is still 30,000 naira.
People are looking at other options.
Wage award is 25,000 or 30,000, depending on if you're, right? Options. Okay.
And it's not actually good for the health, firewood and all of that.
But what can a man do? A man has to do what he has, or woman rather, has to do what they have to do. IDP barks first class in Edo Varsity gets automatic employment. That's a good one. Right. Battling all the challenges to emerge victorious. Court affirms authenticity of Mbaze NYC certificate. You have up to November 8 to produce a Emefiele. Court tells EFCC. That will be all from the front page of the blueprint.
All right, we'll move to the Nation newspaper this morning. And the front page of the Nation newspaper, we are edging closer to the elections, like we've said earlier, and it's more advertorial, more than half of that. We have renewed hope now. Agenda of APC is on course in Imo State. And
we just take the top strip.
Yes, let's just take the top strip. Presidency tackles Obi over attack on Supreme Court. Ex-Anambra governor should find another vocation. And just by the side, heavy rainfall coming in. Lagos, Ogun, Rivers, 12 others. NNPCL explains a FARC claim. NATIV's 2021 report, that's on page 5 of the Nation newspaper. If you'd like to also read the list of those states where the warning was given.
All right, and it's something we should take seriously. Heavy rainfall coming in Lagos, Ogun, Rivers, 12 others. And these warnings from possibly meteorological agency keeps coming. And then you get to wonder, what are the states doing about that? The local government, the orientation of the people to know that this is what you have to prepare for. All right. And moving on, I have a book on the Daily Sun, Daily Sun newspaper, Boko Haram horror in Borno and Katsina. Boko Haram horror in Borno and Katsina, with riders, insurgents behead 13 farmers, kill 9, kidnap others in separate attacks. 1 killed, soldiers missing as gunmen striking Niger-borne vehicles conveying foodstuff. This is what I was talking about earlier. Insurgents behead 13 farmers, kill 9, kidnap others in separate attacks. I remember a few months ago, like a year ago, thereabouts, something like this happened in one of those villages as well, where those bandits came into the village and attacked some farmers at their rice farm. It was still a rice farm at that time, and they beheaded, they decapitated them. It was quite a gory scene. They decapitated them, not to paint a very graphic picture, but did it in a way that all was messed up. So, and why? They said the reason was because one of those villagers gave information to the military, and the military attacked the bandit, and that was a reprisal attack to show them that when you see something, keep quiet. And I remember Garba defending the actions of, what happened at that time, saying those victims supposed to have obtained clearance from the soldiers that were there, that was the sad situation, that whenever they want to go to their farm, the military will have to escort them, and that didn't happen that day. So that was how that happened. The same similar situation has happened here. And it keeps looking like it's a cycle. Evelyn, it's looking like we are helpless. Like these guys can just come, do whatever they come, and go away. Now, one killed, soldiers missing, and as gunmen strike in Niger. Burn vehicles conveying foodstuff. And these are the guys, some persons in government will say, you should forgive. Because, you know, they have their two hands in the air, saying there are no terrorists again, and so you should de-radicalize them and integrate them into society. So what becomes of these people that are dead and are being attacked? It's a sad, sad situation. Any serious government all over the world will never play or joke with this, because the thing is, either IPC or PDP or Labour Party, politics has ended as far as the presidential election is concerned. Every other election, apart from just pockets of National Assembly, duels, it's now for governance. People should feel safe. Sad. And court declares Mbaz's discharge certificate not fake. That was 5 million naira. All right. Anxiety as appeal court reserved judgment in Kano governor's appeal. Sacks Kwakwanso as Kano rep. Declares NPP's dirty. And Kalu Floss, PDP, LP, Abgat appeal court supporters jubilate. South Africa chart record diplomats from Israel. UN leaders demand end to Gaza war. NNPC working with Naiti, other stakeholders to reconcile 2021 report. EFCC fails to produce Emefiele in court amid fresh order. Peter Obi opens up on Supreme Court judgment. Says Apex Court betrayed Nigerians' confidence in judiciary. Find better vocation instead of casting aspersions on judiciary presidency. Another writer says attack on Supreme Court exposes your arrogance. APC. And Supreme Court affirms the legality of lower court dirty. That's barrage of some statements there. An explosion at Canadian High Commission kills 2, injures 2 others. Explosion, fire incidents. One thing is a common denominator here. People have died and property was burnt to a certain extent. And then you see a picture there of Senate President Godswill Akpabio in the middle with others after emergency in plenary of the Senate yesterday in Abuja. You could see most of them beaming, especially Senate President beaming with smile. And I'm sure somebody in that village that had insurgents behead 13 farmers. And they have killed 9 and kidnapped others in separate attacks, and even soldiers missing. Anybody that is associated with them, I'm not sure, will see this picture and be happy for whatever it is. Our leaders should do better. That will be all from the front page of the Daily Sun.
All right, very quickly, let's run through the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Less than 30% of registered voters will decide Bayelsa Imo Kogi polls. That's on page 6. And we have a picture representation right here on the Guardian newspaper about the voter turnout, details of voter turnout, the registered voters. I'll just take it now. Registered voters, 5,409,438. In Imo, we have 2,419,922 registered voters. In Bayelsa, we have 1,056,862 registered voters. And in Kogi, we have 1,932,654 registered voters. With insecurity, low turnout may be experienced. This also gives credence to what the Executive Director of Kimpact Development Initiative, Mr. Bukola Odo, said yesterday on the show. And no election in 38 polling units out of Imo's 4,758 over 0 registration. In 38 polling units in Imo, there was 0 registration. All right, let's move away from that. After to kickstart housing slum development schemes with 100 billion naira. That's on page 5. Court affirms authenticity of Enugu's governor's NYC certificate. Drawbacks of dollarization of the Nigerian economy. That's an editorial, and it's on page 12. Nigeria needs $7.6 billion to restore oil production to 2.1 million barrels per day by 2025. Obi hints at recontesting in 2027, canvasses rotational 5-year single term for presidents. And also he also canvassed for parliamentary government, for us to go back to the parliamentary government. Terrorist attack, Malud procession in Katsina. Another killing spree here. Kill 30, injure, kidnap others. And U.S. government's travel advisory hurtful to Nigerian economy, says FG. That's all on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning.
All right. Before we leave the Guardian, you see those interesting statistics there from the Guardian. Voter turnout, Bayelsa down by 20 points from 36.4% to 16.4%. And Kogi dropped by 9 points, 33.6% to 24.6%. And of the registered voters in Imo, only 20% voted in February
And we
at
can
the general
have
election.
a lower turnout than 20% at this gubernatorial election.
Certainly. And then the registered voters, you have them 5,409,438. And Imo, that's cumulatively now.
Yeah.
Now, Imo having 2.4 million, Bayelsa 1.05, and Kogi 1.9. But out of these registered voters, how many of them have their cards collected? How many of them will come out eventually on the voting day? Now, looking at some of the challenges there, with insecurity, low turnout may be experienced. It's not far-fetched. A survivor, firstly, because somebody will just feel, well, should I go and die because of the ambition of someone? But then it's beyond that. It's about you being a patriot, you contributing your quota to development, and of course, the decision-making process of electing your leaders. But what I usually say is this: when you're not part of that process, you lack the moral right to either complain or criticize or analyze the performance of whoever has been elected. And that's the truth, because when these things was going on, you stayed back. So if 100 and 2,000 or 10,000 of persons like that would do that, then that means everybody will not really be a part of that. And of course, it's about security. No election in 38 polling units because of, over zero registration. And that's very sad as well, but quite notable. And that will be all from the pages of the newspaper, the front pages of the newspaper, the headline segment. We'll go on a break right now. When we'll come back, Peter Obi of the Labour Party, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, spoke on the Supreme Court verdict and said many things quite notable. And that's what we'll be looking at today. It has ended. The road has ended as far as 2023 general election is concerned. But then was the way forward for him and his party. Be with us. We'll be right back.
Did you know that it's against the law to trade endangered species in Nigeria? Did you know that animals like pangolins, crocodiles, sea turtles, and many more should not be hunted, bought, or sold? The best thing for them and the safest thing for us is to leave them to play their role in their natural habitat. Say no to illegal bushmeat. Keep them wild. Keep us safe.
There's nothing better than the roar of your fans. But in Nigeria, there's a roar that will not be heard again. With fewer than 50 lions left in the wild, they could be extinct in the next few years. From loss of habitat and prey, and snares set for illegal bushmeat. Please say no to illegal bushmeat, and let's keep the roar alive for Nigeria. Poaching steals from us all.
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white supremacists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identified
All right, welcome back to Morning Spring. This is the conversation where we interrogate happenings all around the country in the polity, bringing in politicians, stakeholders, and policy makers and analysts right here on the show. Before we went on that break, my colleague Femi launched in on the story we will be focusing on today, and that's about the World Press Conference that His Excellency Peter Obi had yesterday with his party members and supporters in that particular room. We'll have a view at this video. We are going to watch this video now to help us gain where we are going to focusing on. Watch this video. We'll be right back.
We believe in the rule of law. We recognize that the Supreme Court is the end stage of our quest for legal closure on this matter. As a party and candidate, Daddy and I have now exhausted all legal and constitutional remedies available to us. However, this end is only another beginning of our quest for vindication of hope of the common man for a better Nigeria. Both INEC and Supreme Court, as referees respectively, shifted the goalposts in the middle of the game. Going forward, we in Labour Party and the Obedient Movement are now effectively in opposition.
All right, and that's an excerpt from the World Press Conference called by Mr. Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, the last presidential election, where he addressed so many things and he gave his response to the Supreme Court verdict. We look into the nitty-gritty of what he said, and of course, its attendant effect on democracy in Nigeria. We are being joined on phone right now by the spokesperson for the Peter Obi Dati presidential campaign team of the Labour Party, Dr. Yunusa Tanko. Dr. Tanko, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you here. You're welcome to Morning Spring on Western Spring Television.
Thank you so much. All
right. Your principal addressed the press yesterday, spoke about many things, and by the way, he acknowledged that that's the end of the road as far as ambition is concerned for the last election, the presidential election 2023. Said that and I, that's it. But then it's a new beginning, it's a beginning for another quest. So what do you make of your principal's speech yesterday?
Well, clearly, what the principal is saying is that for a Democrat, as long as the process is concerned in Nigeria, when you contest election, you go to the ballot box. At the process of the ballot box, if you feel that you are injured in a way, you will appeal at the court that's already been enshrined by the Constitution. If you're not satisfied with that process, you go to the Supreme Court. That is the provisions of the process. But at the same time, you have a liberty to agree to whatever the process has thrown to you, whether it is fair or not. At this point, His Excellency Peter Obi and Dr. Baba Ahmed and with the Labour Party feel that the process is completely in aberration with what is stipulated. But as Democrats, we are forced to accept the provisions of the process that we find to have been wrongly done. So for now, he has made it clear to everybody that belongs to the Labour Party, the obedient movement, and good Nigerians who want to see a better country, that we are now officially an opposition. We will challenge every process of this government because we still feel that it has legitimate issue hanging on it. And that is why you went further to answer questions with regard to how this particular government has started acting at variance to the constitutional provision, i.e., getting delivery of a yak that already not been appropriated for, purchase of vehicles to the office of the wife of the president, which have been put into a supplementary budget. And a supplementary budget ought to have been expenses that will be for an emergency for the interest of the Nigerian people. As we speak today, Nigerians are wallowing in abject poverty, which is totally unacceptable. So that is the summary of the positions of His Excellency Peter Obi and Dr. Baba Ahmed as of yesterday.
All right, Doctor. Mr. Peter Obi made some, topical points yesterday that we will be focusing on in the course of the program. But yesterday he also expressed his displeasure at the verdict of the Supreme Court, just like his PDP counterpart, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar, also did a week back. But then one would think, just like you called Mr. Peter Obi in your opening speech, that he is a Democrat. One would think Mr. Peter Obi would accept the verdict of the Supreme Court in the spirit of sportsmanship, and knowing fully well, just like the APC spokesperson, Bayo Onanuga, stated yesterday, that the same Supreme Court judgment was beneficial to Mr. Peter Obi in 2006 in Anambra, that took him to the government house as the governor of the state. Your take on that very quickly.
There are two different positions. During the time he was aspiring to be the governor of Anambra State, it was very clear, even to the blind, that Peter Obi won the elections. And he was able to prove every position that he won that particular election. And that was why the judgment at that time was very clear. There was no misguided judgment at that point. And the issues were raised according to the provisions of the law, which everybody applauded. You could go back to that particular provision and see that even when the pronouncement was made, there was jubilation everywhere in Anambra State. But in this case, you could see even where those who are adjourned to have won the election could not even celebrate. They could only go back to their cocoon and celebrate within themselves. Nigerians, they were even crying of pain at the pronouncement of that particular judgment. And so there are two different positions. And that was exactly what Peter Obi was saying, that the Supreme Court is a court of policy and at the same time a court of last option for the common man. The common man on the street is saying that we have been robbed. Our positions and our vote have been taken away from us. And at the same time, you are giving to us somebody who did not qualify to run for election, which have been proved beyond reasonable doubt. But this court decided to keep this particular decision and position and kept it in abeyance, telling Nigerians that you don't need to go to school to become the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It doesn't matter anymore. And that, of course, we cannot agree with.
All right. Taking it a bit further about the Supreme Court judgment, of course, that's the last court of resort and the apex court. Many have said, His Excellency, it will be casted aspersion on the judiciary. And he says it's reminiscent, it's quite expected of politicians that when things don't go your way, you throw everything out, the baby with the bathwater, and, you try to show your displeasure. But when it goes your way, the situation will be different just because the court didn't give the verdict in your favor now. And I will tell you some of what he said for the benefit of those possibly who didn't see that press conference. He said, without equivocation, this judgment amounts to a total breach of the confidence the Nigerian people have in our judiciary. He said to that extent is a show of unreasonable force against the very Nigerian people from whom the power of the Constitution derives. The Supreme Court ruling may represent the state of the law in 2023, but not the present demand for substantive judgment. Mr. Peter Obi went for that to say, the judgment mixed principles and precept. Indeed, the rationale and premise of the Supreme Court judgment have become clearer in the light of the deep, revealing, and troubling valedictory remarks by Honorable Justice Musa Datijo. And he said, in disagreeing very strongly with the ruling of both the Presidential Election Petitions Court, PEPC, and the Supreme Court on the outcome of the 25th February 2023 presidential election as declared by INEC, as Democrats who believe in the rule of law will recognize that the Supreme Court is the end stage. And, he said the judiciary has largely, Dr. Tanko, he said the judiciary has largely acted in defiance of constitutional tenets, precedents, and established ground rules. Political expediency has preceded judicial responsibility. This is coming from someone who says he's a Democrat and he believes in the rule of law. How do you connect this, Dr. Yunusa? This is an aspersion on the judiciary, isn't it?
No, it is not an aspersion. If it was an aspersion, why would my Honorable Judge Mohammed Detijo will come and make those particular positions? He also laid claim to our fears and confirmed what Peter Obi was saying.
Dr. Tanko,
that our judges and our judiciary has been compromised. And he read out the story of the magistrate court where the whole issue started. It leads to the High Court, from the High Court now to the Appeal Court, and to the Supreme Court as we speak. As we speak right now, the positions of the Supreme Court as enshrined by the Constitution have not been filled. Those are some of the fears that we are having. Now, we have put our judiciary into total jeopardy. Well, we can say that some of our politicians have been able to find a way of compromising our judges. And that is not acceptable to all. Because today, you may feel the pain that we are feeling. Tomorrow, it may be your turn. And so if we don't take it up headlong right now, we will have a problem in the future. And to say the least, at the moment now, if we agree and sweep this matter under the carpet and say, okay, the judiciary has spoken, so everybody can go to sleep and all of that, my brother, the common man on the street has no hope for a judiciary to deal with matters. So what we are doing right now is putting up an opposition to everything that is wrong in our country, including the judiciary. Most of our institutions have been left in fallow and they cannot act independently. As we speak, the police is gone. As we speak, the Independent Electoral Commission is gone. As we speak, the judiciary is gone.
How do you mean?
The only one that we have still standing probably is the Nigerian security agency like the army, which have a little of its strength still surviving. Because every Nigerian now is in doubt as regard to the sovereignty of this country. The last one we had was that the Supreme Court will protect the integrity and the sovereignty of the country. But unfortunately, it failed. And they are citing technicality as their own reasons for taking their decisions. You cannot explain to me, and I find it difficult to accept, when Labour Party and Peter Obi got certified true copy, I kept on repeating this, certified true copies of 8,800 documents from the Independent Electoral Commission, presenting this particular document to the court, and yet the court just said that it was a manipulated document. How can that be? How? So these are some of the very important questions that will give you a nightmare even when you are sleeping. To start thinking that probably things are wrong completely with our country.
All right.
And some people must challenge it. And we are doing so.
All right. Dr. Tanko, one will say, isn't it a lot using your words, saying these institutions, INEC is gone, police is gone, judiciary is gone. Some will say that's quite extreme, that you might not have to run down these institutions just because things are not favoring you these days. And number one, that's number one rather. Number two, my Lord Justice Dati Joe, one would say categorically did not mention the case of Peter Obi, the Labour Party, or the PDP, and that your principal cited what he said, but then it wasn't about him or any other person. Then number three, looking at what has played out, the Supreme Court verdict, and your principal's response so far that we're interrogating this morning, one would say, when you never had trust in your judiciary, why go through that route? Because your principal said in his speech that they always know that something like this was going to happen. So why going through that route if you never believed?
Let me start from the last question. We as Democrats must follow the last process of the electioneering system.
You didn't believe?
In order to challenge it and let it do what it said it will do. And at the same time, expose the minuses within the system.
Was that the aim?
To expose the minuses within the system. Like, now, let me ask you a question. Though you are the anchor,
yes,
you have been able to read out categorically to every Nigerian the processes in which INEC said it will follow. And it says it is enshrined in the Electoral Act. You read it and you told Nigerians and asked Nigerians to follow suit. And they came out out in their large numbers to vote, and at the end of it, they contradicted it. Do you think that is fair? You will not be able to answer me. Because majority of Nigerians knew that it was not fair. Then secondly, as regard to the issue of position of the Joe,
yes,
he made it clear that the judiciary is not the judiciary that he knew when he joined it in the first place. It's a complete indictment on our judicial system. Lastly, let me make it very clear.
yes,
Peter Obi, the narration is very simple. He's saying that it is not about him, but about the country, Nigeria. And just like me, I'm so passionate about this country. There's no way we can continue to see things being done wrongly. And under the disguise of one person manipulating the system. And every one of us is saying it that we knew that everything is not correct the way it's been done. And we are handicapped, we cannot be able to do anything about it. Will that help the country? It will definitely not. And you want this country to move to be like Europe or Asian countries, but yet you refuse to do the right thing, and then we will say that that is correct. This particular situation is not about favoring us. Let's be fair to all concerned. It's about doing the right thing. I swear to God Almighty Allah, if this particular election was pronounced the way INEC said it will pronounce it, and the election goes free and fair, Peter Obi will be the first person to go and condemn Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I swear. But you knew that how can you justify 3 elections taking place on the same day, at the same time? 2 of those elections were pronounced, and the presidential election was deliberately not pronounced accordingly. How do you justify it? But here we are, as Nigerians, people will tell us that no, this happened, and it happened only on the presidential election. It did not happen on the issue of the Federal House of Reps. It did not happen on the Senate.
All right.
Are we in the right thinking? Please.
Dr. Tanko.
So when we are talking, we're not talking about our personal self. We knew that we were wounded, but it is not us alone. It is the whole entire country, and somebody must fight it.
all right.
All right, Dr. Tanko, before we move to other topical issues, still on the Supreme Court's judgment, the ruling party, APC, has said that you brought in watery petitions. If you had evidence of what actually happened on the field on February 25th, you had all the time to produce the evidence to the court of justice. But it seems like your petitions was kind of watery, and that is why the Supreme Court or the 2 courts actually worked based on the evidence they got. Because, as we all know, the court of law does not work on public opinion or rumors.
Exactly. I agree with you totally that the court may not act on sentiment of the people, but then you wonder, who are they advocating for? Spirit? It's human being that they advocate for, and then the feeling of the human being that comes into the court. Here, I want to lay it on fact. There have never been a presidential election that have been so challenged in this country like the one we did. We presented humongous evidence, i.e., the issue of the 25%. 2, we presented evidence as regards the issue of forfeiture. 3, we presented evidence, including journalists who are present to testify that this election was wrongly processed. 4, we produced evidence as regards to the issue of the processes of INEC, which INEC itself agreed to. Lastly, we gave humongous evidence of 8,835 copies of electoral documents that was procured from INEC office, which was wrongly, even as we speak right now. go and Google, you'll find that the result that INEC is supposed to produce to everybody, they are only human beings that you only see on this particular picture. But then, the narration is only being on the fact that was Labour Party able to produce all its agents in all the polling units? Is that the only provision that notify elections? No, it is not. We challenge the qualification of the office holder, which has been proven beyond reasonable doubt. But do you know what? The court looked at all of this evidence and said this does not matter at all. Come on. There's no fear and clarity in this particular judgment. And that is why we are rejecting it in totality, even though we have to accept it as democrats.
All right, let's move on to other topical issues. Yesterday at the World Press Conference, Mr. Peter Obi called for a restructuring of our constitution and also called for a parliamentary system of government with a single term of 5 years. Will this really change anything? And if your answer is yes, how workable is this?
Come again?
I said yesterday at the press conference, Mr. Peter Obi called for restructuring of our nation, and also he called for the parliamentary system of government with a single term of 5 years. And I ask you, is this workable? If your answer is yes, I said, will this change anything? If your answer is yes, how workable is this?
Well, it needs a constitutional reform. We need to visit our constitution. You know, ab initio, a lot of our comrades were of the opinion that we need to have a constitutional review before we even go to the elections. I want to agree with them now, and I'm sorry why I did not agree with them at that point. Probably it was a little bit late, because if you ask for a constitutional review at that time, we may not have the elections that we had. But then probably it would have been better, because maybe a lot of things will have been put into place. I.e., for example, the issue of tenure, and which already we are now looking at, because a lot of things have been exposed from this last election. We have leaders that cannot face the Nigerian people and explain their status to them. They can only hide under the judiciary and hide under surrogate to answer questions for them. And the reason why Peter Obi was asking for a parliamentary system of government is that we should be able to interrogate our leaders face to face, just like it is done in Britain, where you will subject the Prime Minister to a lot of questions by the opposition openly, without hiding. Today, we have provisions that can hide the president. You cannot ask him questions because he may decide to answer all the questions that he didn't fit. As we speak today, our president cannot answer questions that will either asked to him directly by the Nigerian people. He will not. He has the Constitution protecting him. And that is the reason why we are saying that possibly a parliamentary or a dual position can help the system so that Nigeria can progress. So as regards to the 5 years, he proposed a 5 years and 30 years rotation so that every part of this country can have the feel of becoming president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And maybe that one will outweigh the issue of agitation by this particular side of the country or the other. And at the same time, you know that constitutional review will have to affect the Electoral Act, so that people will not run to the Supreme Court or Electoral Petition Court to hide under them and say, after making pronouncements, they can easily say that, okay, I still have the right to decide whether I'm going to do it manual or electronic, if the position have not been made very, very clear. So, therefore, we are trying to find solutions to some of our teething problems as was already been exposed at the last election. But all in all, it is still going down to the wires. We need to go back to the National Assembly as it is today. But probably there will be a citizen constitutional reform that will look at all the documents that's already been put in place before. We have had series of constitutional reform, and the documents are gathering dust somewhere. We need to pack them together and look at the valuable issues that have been raised therein and compile them and have a constitutional review that will be acceptable to the Nigerian people for us to move on as a country.
All right.
Otherwise, I can tell you for sure that if we conduct another election in this manner, using the same statute of the INEC, using the same statute of the police, using the same statute of the judiciary, no single Nigerian that has an open mind to win election will win elections, except for those who have already been able to kind of indulge this particular system and use them to their benefit. We will still be wallowing in anger and still be talking in our cocoon.
Yeah.
We need to deal with this particular matter urgently.
All right. Dr. Tanko, one will say, expectedly so, by the way, people are already reacting to what Mr. Peter Obi said yesterday, among many other things, the issue of a single tenure of 5 years. And, you know, some are saying maybe it's just desperation taking too far, that Mr. Obi just wants his chance to become the president. That's why it's coming out with some of these, suggestions there about. That's one. On the other hand, the APC and the media aide to the president, Bayo Ononuga, has spoken, and they said, part of what they said is the grand delusion that made Mr. Obi believe he could have won a national election where he ran the most hateful, divisive, and polarizing campaign that pitched Christians against Muslims and one ethnic group against the other in a multi-ethnic and multi-religious society like Nigeria should be a matter for deeper examination. And he's even said your principal tried to gaslight Nigerians with false claims and innuendos, and that Mr. Obi contradicted himself in that place. Here was a beneficiary of judicial pronouncement in the past, now castigating the same court because its judgment did not go his way. Your take on that?
Well, you see, I don't respond to people who do not view integrity and honor and consistency.
How so?
The same Bayo Ononuga and some other cohorts that have been speaking for Mr. President at the moment were people who have written venom against this same president in the past years. History is there for you to see. But today, they have become the bulldozzers of this particular same person that they almost took to the gallows. One will want to wonder what will have happened within the spirit of the faith of that time. Is it hunger or probably the need to be in power or position? So I'm not amazed if people do not see reason to what we are talking about now. I had a situation in the past where a colleague of mine, I was actually advocating that INEC should find a way of financing political party, which is their constitutional right, based on the fact that provisions should have been made for it. At that time, that my colleague was enjoying government at that time. He has a governor and all. So we on the other side, he didn't see the value of what we are talking about. So until when later he lost out and did not have any single governor, he now came back to say that, I supported the position of Tanko in that period of time. So you see, we can all of us be liable to some of our mistakes.
All right.
When we make them, at that time we are enjoying it. But by the time the warning is down on us, we will be crying foully.
All right.
As we speak right now, many Nigerians are already crying. They are in abject poverty. They could not celebrate the victory that they claim to have voted for. While you are buying your bag of rice at the point in time of 7,000, today you are looking for it, man, you cannot even see.
All right,
you cannot go to your farm. You cannot engage your children into school. Positions of appointment are being bought. Security cannot be provided for you. You cannot run to a policeman and get protection. And all in all, it is happening. Today, your taxpayers' money has been used to buy yak. And even the president's sister is already accusing him of buying vehicles for his wife, which they don't need.
Dr.
These
Tanko.
are situations happening to us right now in our open eyes.
All right.
So we, on our side, we will continue to lay the facts on ground. It is left for Nigerians to pick it or not to pick it. We will all suffer for it. But I only pray that we will open our eyes and see it.
All right.
Tanko may not be right today, but look at the content of what he's saying.
All right.
Peter Obi may not be right today, but look at the content of what he's saying, because it will affect you in the nearest future.
All right.
That position of Peter Obi is an unambiguity, and it's a position of fact, and it's drilling it down as an opportunity and an alternative for us to follow for the betterment of our country.
All right, Dr. Tanko, as we wind down on this conversation, as a true Democrat that your principal has called himself and really now challenges and the way forward, he has even said the Labour Party is now in full opposition, and many persons are wondering, do you have the grit, do you have the steel to play a very credible opposition? One will say, why didn't Mr. Peter Obi congratulate the president as a real Democrat? All right, it's like we lost the connection. We'll try and connect back because we have to just take that thought from him. Mr. Tanko has been talking on this matter. He has been.
And, you know, yesterday I also watched an interview with the vice presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Dati Baba Ahmed. And how he spoke, it was so tough. And you would wonder that after 8 months, going 9 months, the energy would have died down, but it seems like Mr. Peter Obi made mention yesterday at the World Press Conference that the Labour Party wants to be a full-fledged opposition party. And if you will agree with me that an opposition party or opposition is what Nigerians have called for, especially during the 8-year term of the past President Muhammadu Buhari, the belief that we didn't have a strong opposition to tackle the credible opposition, to tackle the policies and you know, actions of Mr. President at the time.
Talking about the position, that's why I asked that question. Hopefully we'll be able to have him back to answer that question, because you being in opposition party and you know, checking through the statement of Mr. Peter Obi, where he affirmed that now Labour Party is opposition party. Do they have the grit? Do they have the steel to give it what it takes? Do they have the spread? Do they have the energy? The energy at that time leading to the election and what it is right now, is it still the same? Did people really mind the opposition? Or better still, did people really mind the Labour Party as a party? Did they follow that party as a party,
or just the movement?
Just the movement, the obedient movement, or it's just the support of Mr. Peter Obi? You know, these are the things that they will have to place on the table. Is it about the man that was on the ballot then, or the movement that produced him, or the party? So the membership of that party, who are they? You know, are people willing to join that party? Do they still have it? Dr. Tanko, can you hear us?
Yes.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you.
I was saying, as a true Democrat, that your principal has called himself, why didn't he, in the spirit of sportsmanship, having real out all these challenges, all these things that he has said, even the Labour Party being in opposition, why didn't he congratulate the president?
You can only congratulate somebody who you feel has defeated you free and fair in a contest. Just like in a football match. You see a football match being played, and people will be defeated fairly, and then they will congratulate each other and go back to a pub and drink. But when you know that you have been heinously wounded and injured, manipulated, beaten, manipulatedly beaten, and in a way, with a lot of our institutions involved in that particular scheme, you don't congratulate such person. You only continue to make your contribution to a nation's development by being in an opposition.
All right.
What I would rather say, they should be glad that we are already in the opposition. because everything that will put out on the public will be a free consultancy for them to latch on to improve their unprepared governance.
All right, Dr. Tanko, you being in opposition now, the Labour Party, many persons are saying the movement has waned. The energy before the election and after the election, especially at this time, is not the same thing. So where do you get the grit? Where do you have the membership? Because many persons supported Mr. Peter Obi as a person, the obedience, as a movement, not as a party. So where do you get the membership from now that you want to be in opposition? That's number one.
That is interesting.
Yes.
That is interesting. History has taught us. Remember when Muhammad Buhari came out first to run for election? Did you see the energy that was on the street for him? The second time, the third time, did the energy fail? No. Until when he became the president, they entrusted everything to him. Unfortunately, he also failed along the line. In our own case, the energy is gathering.
All right.
I've already told you.
All right.
You could sample opinion.
Yes.
If this particular government was legitimate in the hearts of the Nigerian people, they would have been on the street celebrating.
All right.
How many people did you see celebrating?
All right.
That is to tell you that this same movement now is mobilizing themselves, organizing themselves, getting into the nooks and crannies to send the message.
We have to go.
So the energy has now redoubled.
All right. All right.
Redoubled, I can assure you that.
Thank you very much. But in 2 seconds, as it stands today, who is your president, Dr. Tanko?
Who is my president?
Yes.
My president, at the moment now, is Peter Obi.
No President Bola Tinubu.
The man in position of power now is the president of Nigeria, which I am in Nigeria.
Okay.
For me, as a president, my president is Peter Obi. Constitutionally, the president of the nation is no matter how it is in operation, is Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much for that.
That seals it, I should say. Special thanks to Dr. Yunusa Tanko, Labour Party chieftain and spokesperson for the Obi Dati campaign movement in the 2023 election. Thank you so much, Doctor, for coming on board.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Well, that was a very interesting one. I love the last question you asked him. And with the way he's speaking, we may have a hint of that Mr. Peter Obi may likely contest the 2027 presidential election.
Because we had the time constraint, we'll have got the full blast, but we still have to get him back at some point. This will be the first leg of the conversation. We of course, will still interrogate further. You know, I was almost saying that it's like Mr. Dr. Tanko are two presidents. As a Labour Party person, and as personally,
as a Nigerian,
he's his president. And then, as constitutionally speaking, of course, President Bola Tinubu is the president, and that's sacrosanct. There's nothing anybody can do about that than to wait for their time. Either Evelyn Ohiolei will be on the ballot come 2027.
You'll be by my side as my VP. Don't worry. I have a special office for you.
All right, we'll have to talk about that. Are you sure I don't have an ambition?
Please, that's on a lighter note. I'm not contesting any elections.
Right. You know, 2027 is a long time, you know, but politically speaking, it's not as long as you think it is. Because many persons are really thinking, you know, it might be long or it might not be as long as that. We'll take a break right now. And then when we come back, we get to the second leg of the conversation. Stay with us. The conversation will continue right now, and we'll be speaking with Mr. Misbau Lateef, and of course he's a public affairs analyst and of course a legal practitioner from the uni and a senior lecturer from the University of Hull as well. Mr. Lateef, good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
All right, good to have you here again. Yes.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right. What do you make of Mr. Peter Obi's World Press Conference yesterday, where he responded to the Supreme Court verdict? He alluded so many things. Some of what he said, many persons have said he has casted aspersion on the judiciary because some of the strong words that he used. So what do you make of the scenario of that speech?
Well, I think, like you have rightly pointed out, the speech, as I saw yesterday, leaves a sour taste in the mouth because, there are certain expectations you put to people who aspire to certain position of authority in the society. Nigeria runs a democracy, and a constitutional democracy for that matter, and there are rules of the games. By constitutional implications of what happened at the presidential election in 2023, the final authority, judicial authority in the country has laid to rest, the ghost of that election in a manner of speech. So one would have expected that Mr. Peter Obi, and by extension, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, being statesmen, would, I would say, exhibit a sign of sportsmanship. But then, unfortunately, what we saw yesterday, just as we saw with Alhaji Atiku, for me, with due respect to them, was quite disappointing. Disappointing in the sense that they appear to have made up their mind to pull down the house simply because the outcome of the elections and the outcome of the court's or judicial pronouncement did not meet their expectations. You see, in any electoral context or any context for that matter, there will always be winners and then there will always be losers. So in a democracy, you expect people, at least who aspire to become leaders, as I mentioned earlier, to exhibit certain high level of character and discipline to show respect for the system. So the manner in which Mr. Peter Obi has cast aspersion on the Supreme Court, the way he lampooned the judges or justices, then it makes you wonder if the same person has not really benefited from the judiciary himself. I mean, Mr. Peter Obi himself and his vice presidential candidate, Mr. Dati Ahmed or so, these are people who have gone through judicial processes in the past. In the case of Mr. Peter Obi, it was indeed the Supreme Court that restored him as the governor of Anambra State in those days. In the case of Mr. Dati Ahmed, it was the court also that removed him from National Assembly on the ground that he rigged election in Kaduna State, which I made him a member of the House of Representatives. So basically for me, I think since the Supreme Court has concluded on this matter, whatever their reservations, whatever their disappointment, I don't think they at this time need to continue what I call a political belligerence anymore. They're not showing leadership. And I listened to part of your interview with Dr. Tanko. I heard him speak about feel or feelings. When you ask him whether they would congratulate the president, or you can't force them to congratulate the president. But for me, really, when he said it depends on how you feel, this is not how a democracy is run. It's not about your feelings. Feelings are based on emotions as opposed to reason. It's not about how you feel. It's not about whether you feel someone was really elected or not. It is about due process of law. We have gone through all the due process of law allowed by the Nigerian Constitution, and you expect people who aspire to leadership to stand by those, no matter your reservations. Dr. Tanko also talked about, he gave example of, sporting activities or I think football or something. Again, that is the irony. Because even in football or in sporting activities, there are rules. When the coach or the referee, when they have made their verdict, whoever is on the other side, whatever feelings, whatever emotions they have, they just have to abide by it. This is why the idea of sportsmanship, is very paramount in any contest for that matter. So for me, really, I think the outing of Mr. Peter Obi yesterday, with due respect, was quite disappointing and was quite unfortunate, just to be mild. And I think going forward, it was good that he said they are now prepared to play the oppositional role. Fantastic. But then every other thing he said beside that, rubbish whatever spirit of opposition they want to play. You don't destroy the institution. You don't pull down the institution because you are disappointed. You don't congratulate or hail the court when things only go in your favor and then continue to deploy your foot at the system when they don't go in your favor.
All right, Dr. Lateef, you spoke about due process of the law in your opening speech, saying that the due process of the law should be followed or was followed in this election. And in our interview with Dr. Tanko, he made mention that if the due process of the law was followed, his own principal, Mr. Peter Obi, would have been the first to congratulate President Bola Tinubu. But because this election was skewed, and also there were lots of malpractices according to him, and the courts didn't rule on substance, they ruled more on technicality. As a legal practitioner, would you say the judgment of the Supreme Court was fair?
Okay, you see, the issue of whether a judgment of a court is fair or even just, as the case may be, is an issue that can only be determined by certain objective, parameters set by law itself. And that is exactly what I mean by due process. You don't assess a court judgment based on your emotions. You don't assess a court judgment based on your feelings. You assess or criticize or critique a court judgment based on laid down principles. Now, the judgment of the Presidential Election Petition Court and even that of the Supreme Court, for me, as a legal practitioner, is quite sound, or are quite sound. The two judgments in this case, quite sound, because when you analyze them against established principles of law, when you analyze them against established jurisprudence of electoral dispute in Nigeria, you cannot but come to the same conclusion that the court came to. But you see, Mr. Peter Obi and the people that who indulge in this fantasy, they do this merely for emotional blackmailing of the system.
Are you saying
for example,
if Mr. Peter Obi had followed the due principles according to law, there is a chance that he may have won at the court?
Yes, there is. For example, I was coming to that point. It's when we say due process of law, it is not something that is founded, like I said earlier, on emotion or arbitrariness. You have to look at what does the law say. For example, the law says that if you challenge a result returned by the electoral umpire, the INEC in this case, you need to provide your own alternative result that you want the court to look at. The court said we cannot manufacture evidence on our own. Now, I have read the petition of Alhaji Atiku and that of Mr. Peter Obi. There is nowhere in that petition where they presented alternative results. Yet, they had their own, what we call them, people at the polling booth who witnessed the election or observed the election for them. They had their observer, they had their polling agent and all of them. The question is that, why was it difficult for them to collate results from these persons and present them? They did not. I'm telling you, I read the petition paragraph to paragraph. So the question is that when you criticize the courts or you attack the justices, you don't just do that based on your feelings. You analyze their position against the law. Now, is there any principle of our law that says the court can declare someone a winner when they have not established how they won or why they won? No. So now, if Mr. Peter Obi had established his victory, for example, by providing superior number of votes, for example, showing what he won at a particular place as opposed to what INEC returned, and back that up with credible evidence, then you can begin to attack the court. But this is not the case in this instance. Or is it the case of saying Abuja, the FCT, losing in Abuja, that means that if you have won every other place in Nigeria, these are some of these things are even logical. So basically for me, this is where I have problem with Mr. Peter Obi and the people that follow them. They are just blackmailing the system with their own emotional fantasies. These are not things based on principles of law. So the due process of law is what previous judgment of the Supreme Court or of any court of the land have the current judgment, I would say, gone against or violated. There is none. None of them has come forward to say in 2010, for example, the Supreme Court in a similar case decided this way. Why did they have to go in another way or another direction at this time? None of them has come forward to say in a previous case or in a previous principle or in this particular established principle. All they have been harping on is what the public think. Yet, the court of law don't decide cases based on feelings, based on public opinion, based on what people think. They decide cases based on evidence. So to come to your question again, yes, if Mr. Peter Obi had presented a credible case, back with evidence in according to principles of law, perhaps the outcome would have been different. Right. But they did not do all of that. And then they keep blackmailing the court. They keep, trying to put the justices or paint them in bad light. This is quite sad. And this is quite hard for someone in particular who still intend to come back and contest in another 4 or 3 years. I mean, people, I don't know. It's just quite unfortunate. I mean, just to be mad.
All right. In the appeal court, the PEPC, the judgment that was given, and the Supreme Court verdict, it was established by Melot that yes, there were, skirmishes, there were some flaws, but only they were not enough to invalidate the whole process. So I think these were some of the concerns. And when we say, some other persons are saying, the manner in which Mr. Peter Obi have talked that you are frowning at now, that is just how he sees the whole process, that you might want to give him a benefit of the doubt, because all he sees are flawed a process that, what happened on the day of the process on one part, what his lawyers and his campaign team were able to prove is another thing. That yes, they might not have been able to prove some of those things, by the way, but then it doesn't take it away from the fact that that process was flawed. And only that the court said, yes, some part of it might have been flawed, but it is not enough to invalidate the whole process and the announcement of Bola Tinubu as the president. So how do you connect those dots? Misbau.
Well, the point basically is that there are no democracies all over the world. Where elections are perfect or conducted, I would say 100% free and fair, if you want me to use that term. I mean, the United States election that was conducted in 2021, if I'm not wrong, up till now, Mr. Donald Trump and his people still dispute that election, except that they do it within the confines of the law. So, and that is a democracy that is over 200 years old. So now, what the laws of different countries anticipate is that even where there are flaws, and and you cannot rule out the possibility of flaws, okay, they have to be substantial enough for you to invalidate an election. Okay, now in this particular case, what Nigerian law has simply done is to prescribe a rule which is consistent with a global standard that yes, it is possible that this process is not perfect. The process is run by human. We should do our best to make it perfect. But where there are lapses, where there are errors, or where there are malfeasance, or whatever it is, whoever is claiming those things will have to establish that they are substantial enough to change the outcome of the election. This is exactly what Mr. Peter Obi has not done in this case. He has not even demonstrated that he won the basic requirement of 25% in at least 24 states. And then even the simple majority of votes. So the question is, when people ventilate their opinion, when they ventilate their differences, we expect that they do that within the confines of the law. The Supreme Court has pronounced. So you turning around to now castigate the court or trying to pull the system down is quite unpatriotic and unbecoming of people, as I said earlier, who aspire to the same position they are now trying to destroy.
All right. Okay, that's what you call it. By the way, the vice presidential candidate to Mr. Peter Obi, Yusuf Dati Baba Ahmed, I think last night was on a television platform and he said some things which some persons are already frowning at, and I read it out. He said, I'm telling Nigerians, this credited to Yusuf Dati Baba Ahmed, I'm telling Nigerians, rise up for yourselves. No Supreme Court will give you true democracy. Alhaji Tinubu does not own Nigeria. That's the term he used for him. For Peter Obi and me, it is over, but it is not over for the Nigerian people. Nigerians have the power to take back their country. They can and should take back their country, especially when the Supreme Court upheld illegality. What do you make of the statement? Is it deeper than what it looks like?
Well, if seriously, I wish, and I say this with all sense of modesty, I wish I would not have to dignify Mr. Dati Ahmed, with an attention over this issue, because if we say the outing of Mr. Peter Obi yesterday was bad, that of Mr. Dati Ahmed, which I also saw, was quite worse. Worse in the sense that it says so many things that one would not have expected to come from someone of his standing, someone who had previously been at the National Assembly, although illegally, because the court eventually sacked him. And I encourage you to read that judgment of the Court of Appeal, where they said he rigged election in Kaduna State. Somebody who has been a previous, illegally again, a lawmaker, somebody who has risen to the extent of contesting or vying as vice president of, there are things you don't expect people of such status to say. As we speak now, Donald Trump in America and his band, they are going through trial for the insurrection they instigated in the US. So what Mr. Dati Ahmed did yesterday, in a way, could be likened to what the Trumpans, or Trumpatans as they call them in America, did aftermath of the election in America. So he was simply calling for an incitement. He was inciting the public. You see, and I say this with all sense of modesty, in a democracy, people have a right to protest.
Yes.
I would say free protest without violence and all of that. But you see, you do all of those within the confines of law. So when you call people out in a manner of inciting them to take arms against the state, then you are going outside the threshold of rule of law. And you see, this is a problem. And I think Professor Wole Soyinka, who some time ago described, a similar speech as, something of narcissism, was quite right.
All right.
This was exactly what Mr. Dati exhibited yesterday again. That sense of incitement. It's reasonable, if you like. I just hope the relevant authority will pay attention to him and the kind of incitement that is instigating. It's quite unfortunate. Right, these people should accept their loss and prepare for the next election. That is how it is done. All
right, Dr. Lateef, still on the vice presidential candidate's interview yesterday, talking about Dati Baba Ahmed. He labeled Mr. President, President Bola Tinubu, as a drug dealer and a certificate forger, and I should state that he was unapologetic about it. He labeled him a drug dealer and a certificate forger. Now, lots of Nigerians have this feeling that this dent on Mr. President is not just a dent on his own image, but our own image as Nigerians, because it represents over 200 million Nigerians. How do you think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu can put these matters to rest completely?
Yeah, let me start by saying the integrity of whoever occupy a position of public authority is very important. And the integrity here, according to law, and even integrity according to morality. So where there are issues about integrity, yes, it is right to frown upon them. Now, when you say someone is a forger, you see forgery is a criminal offense in law, which attracts at least 3 years imprisonment in Nigeria. When you say someone is a drug addict, it's also a very criminal offense globally everywhere. So the question is that with all sense of responsibility, with that sense of modesty, can anyone say with authority that the president has ever been convicted of forgery? The answer is no. Can anyone say with that sense of responsibility that the president has been convicted of, as a drug baron? The answer is no. It's no. As a matter of fact, the issue of drug baron or drug whatever was one of the issues that Mr. Peter Obi presented before the Election Pension Tribunal and even the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court specifically decided on those two issues. So the question is that Mr. Dati saying all of those things, just like I said earlier, is quite irresponsible of him. And I will not be sparing here. Quite irresponsible because you don't go all out to characterize people as criminals when there is no any official record of conviction. These are criminal allegations. These are not things you just say recklessly or carelessly or irresponsibly, as Mr. Dati Ahmed has said. So this is one of the reasons why I said I wish I don't really have to dignify Mr. Dati Ahmed, with any attention in this case. But my attention actually is for you, the distinguished host of this program. Otherwise, I would have preferred not to even dignify him.
All right.
So you don't go all out to, just because somebody has been accused. Yes, there could be insinuations, there could be accusation and all of that. But in law, we say until people have been established to have committed crime, you don't call them criminals. You don't call someone a thief who has not been found guilty of stealing.
All right.
I mean, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, for example, has been alleged of certain criminality. Mr. Peter Obi himself has been alleged of, evading tax payment in Nigeria when he kept some money, in some tax haven abroad, the Panama paper or the Panama Pandora box and all of those things. Now, do people now, do yourself to now start going around and calling Mr. Peter Obi a criminal? Mr. Peter Obi was held down at Heathrow Airport in London for, I think, several hours. They don't normally do that at immigration or border parts of any country, except there are some insinuation of criminality. Right. Then do you expect people to go around and say Mr. Peter Obi is a criminal because he was detained at Heathrow? He was kept there for hours. Right. So I mean, people should be very careful and behave responsibly, particularly when they aspire to become leadership in the society. All
right, Dr. Misbau, by the way, the situation you refer to where Mr. Peter Obi was detained at the airport, I think he has come out to say it was a case of mistaken identity, by the way. But then, those are quite strong words referring to Mr. Dati's speech on a program last night as irresponsible. Yeah, it's your opinion, but then, he's not here to respond to that. So we would like to just, let's stick to the issues now. And thank you so far. But then when we say, the umpire, in this case, Dr. Misbau, the INEC, some believe they are the heart of this back and forth. That Adimbe, they did what they are supposed to do. Adimbe, they walk their talk. Adimbe, they stood up to their responsibilities. Possibly we might not be having this back and forth, by the way, perhaps, by the way. And some of the technical glitches they refer to by INEC themselves, some of their ad hoc staff who were seen that they could barely perform some simple arithmetics at the collation, at the polling unit, that INEC really dropped the ball, and they came with so much promise that people held them, and they believe, especially the young people, across board, not just the obedience, not just the APC or the PDP. It's a fact that many young persons were really interested in the last election, but the whole process, it's where the issues were and is. INEC's, involvement in this matter, they believe they did, they undo the trust of the people. So, won't you say, Adebi INEC did what it's supposed to have done, won't be in the middle of this back and forth, perhaps?
All right, thank you so much. Let me say, we all put so much expectation on INEC, and INEC made a lot of promises, and I think they deliver, some aspect of the promises, and they fail in some other aspect. But I think, with all sense of responsibility, that INEC has been unduly, I would say, maligned or criticized so far, because many people who try to do that, they do that based on emotions rather than reason. And I'll try to explain this. Now, the issue of failure of INEC in the 2023 presidential election in particular, if you ask me, has been reduced to failure of INEC to upload result on IREF.
All right.
If that is not correct, I want you to correct me.
All right.
People have not said that INEC manipulated. Okay.
Dr. Misbau, I'm afraid we have to go. Time is really of essence right now. I want to sincerely thank you for your professional thought on this matter. I will get to have you, in our subsequent days to speak on these issues and other national issues as well. Dr. Misbau Lateef is a senior lecturer at the University of All and a legal practitioner as well. Thank you for your take.
Thank you. Have a bright morning. Thank you too. Bye-bye.
All right. And these will be the size of the program this morning. I've interrogated the speech of Mr. Peter Obi, the Labour Party presidential candidate at the last election. And of course, we have to go. Femi Ojo is my name. Please do well to follow us on our social media platforms, on X, on Instagram, and on Facebook as well. And we are live always on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. Have a very great morning. God bless Nigeria.
I am Evelyn Ohiolei. Have yourself a good day.